Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Governance and Priorities Agenda for Monday, July 5th. And welcome members of council and administrative staff and anyone that's joining us through the town's YouTube feed. So council, you have an agenda before you. Deputy Mayor, if I can ask you to make the motion to accept, please.
Yes, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as presented.
Okay. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Please use your raise hand button.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. I'm going to have to chime in. I'm coming in from home today, and I am in favor.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, that's 6 hands in favor.
Okay. Thank you very much, and that motion is carried. Moving on with our agenda is number 3, which is a public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to address concerns or share anything with council that they seem appropriate, anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, this is again fully virtual meeting. Has anybody submitted a written response to be read into records?
Good evening, Your Worship. It's the Manager of Legislative Services, and we have not received any requests for public input session this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on the agenda, number 4, which is presentations and delegations. Today we had scheduled to have our MP, Dane Lloyd, kind of speak to council as that the House is now kind of in recess for summer. Unfortunately, our MP Lloyd was not able to attend today. He had some issues come up, and so our staff and we'll work with his staff to make sure that we can rebook him in the near future. So with that, moving on to number 5, which is business items. It is the environmental master plan and the environmental stewardship strategy. And this is for information. So go ahead, administration, for your presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oh.
No, go ahead, General Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Apologies for that slip up. The General Manager of Planning Infrastructure here. It is an exciting day for us today as we bring forward the environmental master plan and the environmental stewardship strategy. This has been somewhat a long time coming for the town. It's both highlighted in our municipal development plan and in council strategic plan, the importance of the environment. So we're happy today to present some foundational information and plans to move forward to set the stage for the future for the town. I'll now pass over to Mr. Dibble, who has and his team who will provide the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. I'm excited, as Ian was indicating. This is about 8 years of my time with the town hoping to get this done, and over the last basically 12 months or so, with the work of a variety of people who I'll introduce here in a sec, we finally got this all done and wrapped up. So we're very excited to present it. So to present it, we have Emma Zerwell, who's a planning intern through the provincial program. She started with us in September of last year, and she will kind of wrap up. She's been doing most of the kind of coordinating work over the last 8 months. And we have Nicholas Barron, who is a university graduate student. Emma's also from the University of Edmonton. They both graduated recently. Nick comes to us through the Sustainability Scholarship Program, which is unique to the University of Alberta. And he will actually start us off here. So with that said, go ahead, Nick and Emma. Any questions, please leave to the end and we'll address them as best we can. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm Nicholas Barron. I am a master's student at the University of Alberta, as Miles mentioned, who had the great opportunity of working here at the town from January to March as a sustainability scholar. And during my time at Stony Plain, I worked on the EMP project, which will be detailed in this presentation. In April and May, Emma Zura will polish the ESS into a final version, which she will also be telling you about as well. So today I'll begin by summarizing the journey of creating these two documents, the major changes that have been made to the EMP since it was last presented to you in late 2020, how the public participation went and how these results were incorporated into the two documents, and then the creation of the ESS technical report. Emma will take you through the process of refining the ESS into a final action document. Following our presentation, you are free to ask us any questions or discuss the document more thoroughly. In terms of project timeline, as you know, the need to renew Stony Plains environmental documents stemmed from Council's realization that the current ESS was outdated, which kickstarted the process of creating the EMP summary report. Over the fall of 2020, Emma and Chelsea officially commenced the first rounds of public engagement for the EMP. In February, we conducted a second round of public participation. The initial summary report was decoupled into two documents, a policy document in the form of the EMP and an action document as the ESS. In April, the initiatives from the technical report were categorized into an environmental portfolio with 5 phases. And all of these events lead up to today, where the two documents are now before Council for review. So to start off, I'll begin with the EMP summary report, which was created by a previous sustainability scholar, Jacqueline Winkler. This was presented in front of Council last fall. The EMP summary report was created through the study of municipal environmental policy in neighboring municipalities, in addition to academic literature and Stony Plains environmental documents. An important thing to note here is that the original EMP summary report contained both policy statements and generalizable statements in addition to actionable items. However, to ensure that Stony Plains environmental priorities were captured in a cohesive document that would guide environmental action in present time, we decided to decouple the summary report into two separate documents, the EMP and the ESS. Collectively, these two documents form Stony Plains environmental framework. Essentially, the EMP is the guiding document that sets the roadmap for Stony Plains environmental priorities. It summarizes Stony Plains' distinct environmental context and includes both broad policy statements, which include all environmental considerations. These considerations are what guide the ESS, which is the action document. So while the MDP guides sustainable growth and development in Stony Plain, the EMP focuses specifically on the environmental aspects of sustainability while also being conscious of the town's social and economic vitality. So in summary, the EMP is really the document that will guide Stony Plain's future as it pertains to environmental management, responsibility, and stewardship. At the same time, the ESS will serve to realize these goals through actions. The EMP provides the direction that is required. Now moving on to the changes that were made to decouple the summary report into two documents. So as you can see, the vision remains the overarching statement, which are then divided into themes, followed by policies to address environmental considerations within each theme. The ESS goes a step further by indicating specific goals to address each of the policies of the EMP and actions that the town can pursue to achieve these goals. So in order to simplify the hierarchical structure, we did not place guiding principles within the environmental framework structure. However, guiding principles are still incorporated, but they're an overarching concept. In a sense, they're extensions of the vision. So now I'll go over the major changes that were made to prepare the final version of the EMP. Most notably, changes were made to the vision, themes, and guiding principles. Formatting was also improved to enhance readability and simplicity. Most notably, the document was carefully crafted to ensure that it was uniquely Stony Plain. This was done by adding considerations most relevant to Stony Plain's distinct ecology and feedback that we received from both rounds of public participation. So in line with making the EMP uniquely Stony Plain, the vision of the EMP was changed. And this was primarily based on what we heard from both residents and council. While the old vision was generic and could be applied to any environmental document, the second vision places Stony Plain in the context of its environmental and social character, and specifically incorporates aspects of Stony Plain's future while embracing the tenets of environmental responsibility and taking action as a community. The themes are also simplified into broad categories that provides a framework broad enough to include all environmental considerations. These are energy, land, air, water, and waste. Furthermore, ecosystem and climate resilience considerations were embedded throughout all of the themes and therefore are overarching considerations as opposed to separate themes. Within these 5 themes are policies that address the various considerations within that theme. The guiding principles were also slightly modified. While the first 4 were reworded to best match the EMP's vision, the final guiding principle was incorporated as a result of community and council feedback. We realized that for any environmental action to be successful, public awareness, education, understanding, and participation are essential, and this has been woven throughout the EMP. So overall, here is the EMP's new framework. Now we'll get into the main driver that enabled the EMP to become uniquely Stony Plain, and that is the public participation. So within 5 months, we conducted 5 public participation opportunities with the aim of gathering as much input as possible from all affected stakeholders. The first public participation took place in October and November of 2020. It aimed to gather insight on environmental awareness and perceptions of residents. In February of 2021, we followed up with residents to confirm the initial findings, in addition to probing further on certain environmental actions to inform the creation of the ESS. In addition, we engaged external stakeholders in an environmental action survey in February as well as incorporating input from council and internal staff. Through these rounds of public participation, 105 unique individuals were surveyed. Of these, 18 belonged to the external stakeholder community. Overall, the feedback was largely positive from both residents and external stakeholders. The majority of participants agreed that the environment should be prioritized and were in favor of taking action to improve the health of the environment. Some participants, though, did give constructive criticism regarding accountability and public awareness, which we have considered in both the EMP and ESS. Lastly, participants generated many suggestions for initiatives that they would like the town to consider pursuing. These initiatives were taken into account in the technical report stage of the ESS, which I will transition to now. So as previously mentioned, the ESS is the document that will be guiding actions based on direction from the EMP. Furthermore, the ESS builds on Stony Plain's legacy of environmental stewardship and is a renewal of the 2011 ESS. The original ESS was adopted in 2007 based on direction from the Community Sustainability Plan, which was later incorporated into the MDP. The goal of the new EMP and ESS is to revive Stony Plain's history of environmental stewardship that builds on our past success. So about half of my time here at Stony Plain was spent creating this technical report for the ESS. My work began with extensive research of potential initiatives that the town could adopt, in addition to their feasibility, environmental impact, and cost. To do this, I researched existing environmental initiatives in Stony Plain, initiatives that neighboring municipalities in the Edmonton metropolitan region, around Alberta, and even throughout Canada have adopted, and did research to determine the ease of implementation and the cost that would be associated with implementing this in Stony Plain. To best gauge what both the financial and capacity costs to the town would be, I spoke to experienced environmental professionals who had expertise in the subject at hand in both the municipal and private realm. Information obtained from this research was used to derive estimates of costs and logistics of implementing certain initiatives in Stony Plain. This insight, in addition to feedback from town staff, allowed me to select and list specific goals and actions for the town to consider pursuing. So through all of this research, the technical report consisted of 61 different environmental initiatives that fell into 19 goals and the same 5 themes. Of these 61 initiatives, several were already ongoing at the town. Some were initiatives that were being carried out by federal, provincial, and regional organizations that Stony Plain could participate in, and the remaining were potential future initiatives that the town may consider pursuing. So the prioritization of these initiatives was then done by Emma Zirawal after I was gone. So now I'll pass it on to her to tell you about how the ESS was finalized.
Thank you for that introduction, Nick. As Nick mentioned, my name is Emma Zirawal, and I am the planning intern here at the town. So now I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the creation of the environmental stewardship strategy as you see before you today, and some of the features of it. So the first thing that the environmental stewardship strategy does is it defines the town's environmental portfolio, which is a term that we've coined to describe all of the initiatives that are going on in the town currently and all the future initiatives the town wishes to pursue. The ESS also addresses completed, ongoing, and future initiatives, develops a 5-phase action plan of future initiatives that the town plans to pursue, and then following up on these initiatives, it creates an annual reporting requirement to ensure that we are staying on track with the environmental action plan. So the environmental stewardship strategy refinement resulted in the taking of 61 initiatives that Nick had given to us in a thematic form down into parts of the environmental stewardship strategy, which resulted in 17 actions going into the 5-phase plan, as well as other initiatives that were currently ongoing or being handled by external categories. The initiatives were refined into the 5-phase action plan by the following 5 considerations, being time, cost, priority, category, and feedback from the public participation. So we really tried to weigh all the initiatives to see what was the best strategy to move forward with them. In the environmental stewardship strategy, there are the 5 themes, as Nick has mentioned, from the EMP as well. They are energy, land, air, water, and waste. And you'll notice throughout the document and throughout the rest of the presentation, the icons that you see on the screen here will be carried throughout, as well as the colors to indicate which initiatives are part of which themes. The completed initiatives that the town has done in the past 5 to 10 years are initiatives that were found within the ESS technical report, as well as completed initiatives that the town wanted to recognize as well. This has just allowed us to get a baseline of where we're at with initiatives we've completed and start to grasp that picture of environmental initiatives. Nextly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the environmental portfolio. This is something I had mentioned before a little bit. So the environmental portfolio really captures all of the initiatives that are currently ongoing and the town plans to pursue in the future. These are the ongoing initiatives in the 5-year action plan, and then external initiatives, so initiatives handled by regional boards, provincial and federal levels, and then initiatives that are beyond the action plan. So these are initiatives that are denoted as future potential initiatives, but earmarked for a little bit further out than the 5-phase action plan. As initiatives become pursued and or completed, they will move out of the environmental portfolio into a list of completed initiatives when we are no longer actively pursuing them. Within the environmental portfolio, the initiatives are broken down by theme. This diagram here represents in the outer ring the percentage of initiatives that are currently either ongoing or future. And then within the inner circle, the darker of the 2 wedges within each color represents ongoing, and then the lighter red wedge represents future initiatives. This was a way that we could capture the breakdown between the ongoing and future initiatives, because it's important to note that in the future initiatives, there aren't as many waste initiatives, but that's because 48% of all of our ongoing initiatives are already related to waste. And that was something that was really important to the residents as well. Our ongoing initiatives are just initiatives that the town has been working on for the past little while. As you can see, as I mentioned before, the majority of these initiatives are waste related, as well as other important initiatives like Arbor Day, restricting open burning bylaws, lighting trails with solar, and so on. And then we get into the action plan. So this is a 5-phased approach in which the town has denoted specific initiatives, either as initiatives that administration will take on, initiatives that have the little tag beside them indicate that there'll be a corporate plan initiative and they'll have a cost estimate within them. And then the initiatives with the graduate cap denote initiatives that could be done by a sustainability scholar or a future intern. So you'll see that most of the initiatives are related around energy, land, and water. This again is because a lot of our initiatives currently are around waste, and there was a lot of desire for initiatives surrounding energy, land, and water. The bottom line, where there's the multiple circle, indicates initiatives that will be captured by a bunch of different themes. So creating an environmental web page and online brochure could be dealing with topics related to land, water, energy, air, or waste. It just provides that space for us to provide education online. And then within the environmental stewardship strategy, there is also goals. These goals were adapted from the goals that were listed within the environmental stewardship strategy technical report. These goals are baseline goals that the town would like to begin their journey on. And then as we develop, such as the first one, emissions targets, as we develop more information and pursue baseline initiatives, we'll be able to develop the goals and strengthen them and make them more specific as we begin to understand where we're at with emissions. Each of the goals is denoted here as to whether or not it's already been working towards in the ongoing initiatives, whether it's going to be worked towards in the action plan, whether it's going to be worked towards in external initiatives such as regional partnerships, or whether it's a goal that's going to be handled beyond the action plan. And so then lastly, if we get into the implementation of these initiatives, so as I mentioned a little bit before, there will be initiatives that will be for the corporate plan. So these will be large report studies and plans. These will require a larger budget and potentially external consultants and those sorts of things. Sustainability scholar event or actions will be one-time events, reports and studies, things that are a bit easier for a sustainability scholar to do by themselves. And then administration will be handling the annual events and the implementation plans of all of the initiatives that are currently ongoing. And then with annual reporting and updates, we will be specifying new ongoing and future initiatives and their related goals every year. This will allow us to track our progress on the environmental initiatives. And then we are estimating that the environmental stewardship strategy itself will be updated every 3 to 5 years following the annual reporting and updating that will occur annually. So thank you. Thank you for your time here today, and we welcome any questions or comments.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, Nick and Emma. It was very insightful. And as mentioned earlier by the manager, this has been in progress for 8 years. So I'm very glad to see this coming to fruition and all the ability to initiate and have input from our stakeholders, from our residents, and from members of council. Thank you. With that presentation, members of council, any questions or comments for clarity and understanding on the presentation and the report? Councillor Bennett, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have several comments and questions, and I'm seeking your advice as to how to proceed. If you want to stop me at some point and let someone else talk, and then I'll come back to it. however you want to run this meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Let's just go one at a time, and then so that our staff can answer them.
Okay, fine. So all of my questions are in the ESS, and my first one is on page 228. It's action 6, and it is about the audit, and I don't have the page. I don't have it right up here, but it has to do with the audit and residents being able to improve their energy efficiency. So my comment here, Mr. Mayor, and I guess this would be to you and perhaps to our administration, this is where I see the SEEP program, the Clean Energy Improvement Program, really fitting into our overall plan. It talks about all the things that the SEEP grant could fund. And so I'm wondering, at what point can we look at that as a viable option for our residents?
Through your worship,
definitely. Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Bennett, I'm very intrigued to know more about the program. I'm not too familiar with it right now. I guess one of the key kind of overarching aspects that the ESS actually establishes is the idea that we will be refreshing, I'll say, the environmental portfolio and the strategy. And this sounds like something that we could again, look at kind of when we're doing the annual updates to see if there's something that makes sense to kind of start as a new initiative. So at this point, I guess I'd say I'm interested to know more. You can probably send us details. That would be amazing. And it's kind of through that mechanism that we would really look into alterations, I'll say, to say the 5-phase action plan itself. Does that help provide some context there? Or if you want further, please ask.
I'm surprised, Mr. Mayor, that, you know what, I'm going to stop because I know that I'm out of order here. So you go ahead, Mr. Mayor, and direct the conversation.
Fine. Yes, Councillor Bennett. And again, action number 7 is to do a community energy audit. And so there's nothing about talking about making our community more energy efficient, because we have not determined what our baseline is for the community. But that program can be part of council's planning conversations going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I forgot to say at the beginning that I am so excited about this whole report tonight. I feel like I've waited 14 years to read something this good and this specific. So first of all, I wanted to thank our administration and our 2 interns for the work that has been involved in this. You know, Mr. Mayor, I read this whole thing as if I were reading my Tom Clancy novel. It was just so exciting to me. So I have other questions, Mr. Mayor, if you want me to continue, or I'll give the floor over to my colleagues.
Go ahead, keep on going.
Okay, I'm looking at page 223. And that is has to do with the traffic lights, and that's action 2. And I wondered if we have if that is indicated in, it says traffic lights, but are we including street lights there? And the reason I ask the question is that some of our street lights and our pedestrian crossings with the solar have been in place for several years. I'm wondering what the lifespan is on them and whether we are making room in our corporate plan to renew those as they become obsolete.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Bennett.
Go ahead.
two parts to this one here. One, I just wanted to kind of broadly indicate that these action items here as listed in the technical report are the ones that have been refined into those that actually are in the ESS. Again, I have no problem going through the specific ones here, but we have tried to look at these a little bit to refine them down, because again, we were upwards of over 60 different initiatives at the beginning here, and we wanted to kind of make that a little more palatable. With action number 2 here in particular, it is intended to be broadened, and I believe it is an ongoing initiative. Can I just ask Emma if you could go back a couple slides here to show the ongoing initiatives? Just be useful to show. Yeah, so if you look under the first one, the energy there, we have the LED traffic light replacement program, and we also have the trail solar lighting. So again, both of those are aimed. One is for all traffic lights, including those just down the road that shine light on the street, not just at the intersections themselves, but both. And then again, the trail solar lighting is a little more specific to those that are along the paths in Stony Plain. But my understanding is we've been doing this for a number of years now, and that our plans are to continue to do that, hence why it's now termed or categorized as an ongoing initiative.
Thank you. Councilor Bennett.
So another comment. So this document, I noted in certain places, you were actually addressing the residents and the way that they could participate and be responsible for part of this. But I'm wondering, and I know that there's a plan, there's a website, there's some brochures you mentioned, but how is this going to be broken down into smaller segments in order for the public to really buy into what we've suggested as a strategy?
Through your worship to Councillor Bennett, thank you for the question. One of the more exciting parts, I guess, is how we actually get back to the community and back to our residents with these environmental initiatives. The two important ones, and again, Emma, if I can get you to go to the action plan slide. Thank you very much. You'll notice, again, the very bottom, there's the create the environmental webpage and online brochure, as well as kind of in the stage 5 develop a rebate strategy. So I think part of our understanding when we went through this is we noticed there was, unlike some municipalities, we haven't really developed a baseline for some of these rates. So when we were coming up with the actions and the goals in particular, it was difficult to give it a rate to meet a specific target. So a lot of the work that we're going to be working on in the first few phases is to establish those numbers where possible. And as part of that, we're going to be determining what makes sense, for example, for rebate programs, kind of tying back this to the first question. In terms of your specific question here, I would say when we do an initiative, for example, urban forestry or the Arbor Day or anything like that, the intent is that we would start to incorporate that information that we're working on that year into updating our environmental webpage on, and that we would use that as well as events such as Arbor Day to promote and really expand the knowledge or the awareness within the community on whatever topic we're working on through the phased action plan, and use that bottom initiative there, the first one, the creating the environmental website and online brochure, to really propagate those to make sure that they're communicated well to all of our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bennett.
Thank you for that. I really hope that some really specific strategies are developed there. Every time we initiate something and we say, go to the web page to look this up, or there's an online brochure, I think we lose some of our residents. So, and I'm sure that you guys will think of something that, you know, will be more direct to the residents so that they really do understand what we're trying to do and why. This was such a well-written document that I don't want to see any of it lost. Mr. Mayor, I have a couple more. Should I continue?
Yes, quickly. Go ahead.
Okay, could you just leave it on this slide, please, of the action plan, because they are right there. So the first, so action 1.3 was the, the urban forest, and we talked about, you talked about using native and edible plants for one of the phases. I just would like to note that, you know, for every time that we plant an edible tree, we should also have a strategy in place for harvesting that fruit. Too often we plant edible fruit, and then it goes to waste. And I do understand that animals eat it, but it really needs a stronger strategy to make sure that it's used. I made note that perhaps partnering with the Multi or the Pioneer Museum to organize volunteers to harvest the fruit and perhaps do something with that fruit, preserves or baking or something, so that anything that we do plant is also used. That's just a comment, I guess. I had no questions there. And the other one was on the Willow Park natural revegetation. And I'm just wondering, I know I've brought this up before, but I'm just wondering if we can't use, or have you talked about or thought about using goats or sheep for natural weed control in that area?
Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Bennett, I don't believe we have specifically talked about it. I am personally aware of what the city of Edmonton has been doing and some other municipalities regarding such. I think it's a very interesting area that we could further explore. But I don't think it was something that made it sort of specifically into this plan. Again, the closest one that I would have pointed to is the Phase 4 Willow Park Natural Area Revegetation. Again, I think it's a little bit different because that's focusing more on, say, expanding the treed areas, for example, or some of the more intense forms of vegetation, as opposed to just maintaining the weeds. But I know the weed program is quite interesting with you of the City of Edmonton.
Thank you. Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, and thank you, Miles, for that answer. I'm just here to spark some more ideas, so thanks for that. Also, I had a question about the water on page 263, and I'm sure it's in one of these graphs right here too. And that's the road salt study. When I attended the SRWA for Councillor Meyer a couple months ago, I discovered some of our regional partners have already instigated this. And it's so very important to protect our water streams. And when I asked our planning and infrastructure department, we seem to be really not quite, it doesn't seem to be a high priority at this time. So I'm wondering if we can move that up to a higher priority, or if this report is the final draft and no more changes will happen on that.
Thanks, Councilor Bennett. I think this is a document that council will use in terms of strategic planning. So it is up to council to decide on the priorities coming forward. Administration will do the best to bring initiatives forward that meet council's strategic plan and direction, but it is still up to council to decide exactly what gets funded for which year. So if council at that point in time wants to move initiative forward, that is council's prerogative, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that explanation. It's kind of hard for us to include things in a strategic plan when we don't know really what some of these needs are. I was very surprised when I attended that meeting that it is a very high priority for the SRWA, and some of the other municipalities were well ahead of us, and some were just finding out like me. So so I hope that I'm planting some seeds for our next strategic planning session with some of my colleagues here. If I could continue, Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple more.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the next question is really kind of personal. It has to do with my neighborhood. And I was really interested in reading the part about the rain garden and for the runoff rain to be used as part of a watering system for plants in your yard. You know, in my neighborhood, it has always bothered me that the sump pumps run continuously. We have water going down into our sewer system, our grates, almost constantly in this neighborhood, and I know I'm not the only one. And so I'm wondering if somehow that could, a rain garden from the sump pump runoff could be initiated into rain gardens in a person's yard.
I'll go to administration, but I can't see the town legislating that. That'll be up to the individual owners to see if they want to do that. Similar as we can't legislate people to have rain barrels, but many of us do. You know, we have a program that we kind of show people that maybe you can do this, maybe you can't, but it's still up to you. Right. So I don't want to be in a position where the town is saying you have to do this, you have to do this. And so I understand that there is a lot of water going down, but some of these things are just to bring attention to our residents, and maybe they can do something that they want with it.
I agree. I agree so much with you, Mr. Mayor, on that point. It's just that I don't think homeowners have any information as to how that can happen, and that's why I'm bringing it up at this point. Is just to ask our administration if they have any thoughts on this. I'm also wondering if all of our new developments or most of our new developments also have sump pumps built into residents' homes in order to alleviate the water level from our houses.
Thank you.
I believe that's a requirement. Go ahead, administration.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And through Your Worship to Councillor Bennett, it does depend on the geotechnical report done for each neighborhood based on the water table and underlying soil conditions. Sump pumps are often required in Stony Plain. I don't believe they're required everywhere, but most places do have them. In terms of kind of the more general question about promoting rain gardens and rain barrels, if you look on the action plan here, I guess the way we've kind of set this up is so that as certain initiatives are taken off, if you know in phase 5, we have a water use study, and there's a few kind of water related actions in phases 2 and 4. Part of the intent is that once we do that water use study, we would have a better idea about where a rebate program, right below that, develop a rebate strategy, could be done to promote things such as rain gardens, bioswales, rainwater collection barrels, those sort of things. So it's kind of the conceptual thought behind this, is that we do the study to understand what the actual situation is, and then we can actionize that through other later initiatives.
Yeah, so Councillor Bennett, in terms of our environmental pillar, that's something that we can do in terms of education as we continue to develop this file, this pillar in our community. Definitely the suggestions of how we can reuse, recycle, and reduce can be part of the education program going out. Thank
you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one more comment. and that has to do with promoting and encouraging xeriscaping lawns. I noticed we talked about it a little bit in here, but honestly, we just had a water restriction, voluntary, because of our hot summer, and I just can't help but think about if there were more lawns that were rock instead of lawns, people would be using less water during these times of heat. Mr. Mayor, I think that's all I wanted to say here. I also just wanted to say that Emma and Nicholas did such a good job with their presentation, and I'm really, really impressed with the work they did and their public speaking. So well done.
Thank you much for those comments, Councillor Bennett, and those questions. Thank you for spurring the conversation, especially for us to consider as we move into our next strategic planning. The council at that day and time can review and visit. Going to Councillor Loy now, please. Councillor Loy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And Judy did a very good job there too. The work that Emma and Nicholas did is really outstanding. I often think that our people will see improved roads and new sports facilities, new parks, etc. But I don't think that they ever really see the grand work such as this, the EMP and the ESS, that's done by our planning department in this particular case, but in many other examples through all the other pillars that are in this town. It's not sexy, but so very important. And I just think kudos got to get out to them. And I only wish our taxpayers could get to know how hard and intelligently our staff work. And to me, this is a real shining example. That's my comment. I do have a question. I believe we'll go to Emma. I looked at the thing regarding waste, and years back, there wasn't any such thing as recycling. And we've kind of got our heads around now that we do recycle, and in several different ways. But I think there's another component, which maybe I missed it, maybe it's to come down the road, but it's, I'll say waste reduction. And I did read it there. It says 70% diversion from landfills by 2030. Boy, that's an admirable task. Do you have any idea how we would, yes, thank you. It just popped up on the screen, Emma. It says encourage community awareness and action on waste management. But do we have any more of a concrete way of doing it? I just see all the time our garbage bins, I'll use that, trash bins, our recycle bins, our organic bins are full. I see our blue bags are full, tons of them. I go to recycle all the time. And I don't know, I'd like to really see us take a reduction in the waste as an important thing. So I'll stop there and ask for any input, please, from anybody in senior in their team here.
Yes, thank you. Maybe we can staff and just give a kind of update to where we are in terms of achieving waste diversion from our landfills. I think the last report a couple of years ago, we were getting close to 60% waste diversion from the landfills.
Through your worship to Councillor Loy, as Emma did mention, we have had a lot and continue to have a lot of waste-oriented environmental initiatives. We're actually, since I've been with the town, I've always been very proud to say that we're one of the leading areas, especially for the amount of, I think, resources and commitments we put to it. We've done a really good job. Our community in particular, our residents, have done a great job in our waste diversion. Again, I've seen it go from, I want to say, about 40, high 40%, past 50, 59, almost into the 60 sort of thing, percent waste diversion since I've been here. So I think that is a testament to our community. The difficulty, I guess the challenge is that we are already doing a lot of things. We have a lot of good initiatives. We've got a good recycling center already. The Wipe Out Waste campaign from years back. Don't forget the current slogan that we're working on right now. But again, we have a lot of these different initiatives that are very good right now. And I think if you notice through the report, a lot of our initiatives that we're going to be working on or are working on now that are new ones are being done externally, because we're doing a lot of good things locally, but there's higher scales or larger magnitudes, collaborative stuff that I think we need to do with our regional partners to really be able to get that number even higher than that. And I would leave it at that at this point. But again, it's a very important area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may just add to that, may I go, sir?
That too as well, because as council is fully aware, we've been supportive of the initiative and the lobbying efforts to the provincial government regarding extended producer responsibility, and it sounds like the province is going to start moving on that file. I definitely go to Councillor Matties for a little more update on that. She's been leading the charge on that one. It says it allows those people that are producing the packaging and etc., they have to figure out what they're going to do with the waste. So maybe it's going to be less packaging. There's dollars coming into our communities for recycling, because I think Alberta is one of the only province that has not signed on to the EPR. So those dollars are already there. So once that starts to become a mainstream thing with the provincial government, we'll definitely see a lot more diversion to the landfills.
Yes, I think it's important, and trust Facebook, because that's the gospel. There was somebody on there said they ordered, I think it was 4 batteries that came from Amazon. They said the packaging was just absolutely ridiculous. That they shipped them in instead of just shipping them in an envelope. Now, maybe a battery is not a good example, but I agree with you. We have to divert back. A question here, it says achieve 70% waste diversion from landfills by 2030. Is that question, Emma, 70% from the existing tonnage or whatever we put in the landfills now? Or as Mayor, you just mentioned, and I remember being part of this 7, 8 years ago, where we really tried to get it up like to 40%, 45 to 50, etc. So I'm just like, where's the bar set? Is it 70% of what we currently put to landfill, or 70% of what we did back, 7, 8 years ago?
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Loy. I believe that if you notice, there is an ongoing initiative. So the mark, I believe it was for, was it 2010 from the report? I'm not too sure. Maybe administration can provide the exact date and year, but it is from that point in time when we did the audit in terms of the wipe out waste and everything else that our staff have been pushing for and working with external groups to reduce the amount of waste that was going to landfills. Administration, do you have a date for us?
Through your worship both to your worship and through to Councillor Loy, the achieve 70% waste diversion for landfills by 2030 is the number that we have. It's actually on the screen there in the bottom in the yellow, and it's intended to be an absolute number. So as I said earlier, when we were kind of at the 40% moving towards the 60, this is really to get us to that 70% in that sort of metrics. Thanks.
Yes. Can you
Your Worship,
let us know when we started?
Your Worship, it's the General Manager here. I do have some statistics that go back to 2007 when the town was around 45% diversion. We are currently around 60% diversion, as you mentioned earlier. So the goal is to improve that by an additional 10% in the next decade.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's much clearer now. We know our benchmark.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Loy?
No, I'm just very happy with the whole report. Like, to repeat Councillor Bennett there, it was absolutely crucial. Again, it's not the sexy stuff that our people see us doing, but it is so important. You can have beautiful parks and stuff like that, but if you gotta, waste overflow and poor water and stinky air, it's useless. I'm just behind this 100%. I'll not rant on anymore, sir.
Thank you very much, Councillor Loy. Again, this goal is a diversion rate and not a reduction rate. So if you look at the master plan, some things have a reduction rate. So we have to figure out what the base is and then try to reduce that amount. This is actually a diversion rate that council started way back in 2005, 2006, is to say how much garbage is produced by the town of Stony Plain. We want 70% of that to be diverted from landfills. So if one year we have 1,000 pounds or whatever, we want 700 pounds to be diverted in terms of recycling, reused, and all that stuff. And then if we have, 1 year we have 2,000, tons of garbage, we want 70% of that to be diverted. So it's not a flat number. It's always a number that we're trying to achieve at 70%. So it doesn't matter what that amount is. We're trying to achieve 70% of that diversion away from the landfills.
No, and I agree with that, and I appreciate it. As I say, that's why when I initially started there, where are my notes here? Recycle some of and reduce. I still would like to see us really work hard to reduce the amount of waste that we generate. And then if it's to get 70% of that from the landfills, that's even better. Because as I say, yeah, I just watch organics and the stuff that businesses throw out in our food industry. I mean, it's really terrible. And they talk about all the energy that's required to produce these things, just to have it end up in garbage and what we do with it afterwards. I would really encourage the reduction part of it as a key component. And thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you very much. Good comments, and thank you for those questions. Moving on, the next one is on my list is Councillor Matties. Actually, before you ask your question and provide comments, Councillor Matties, can you just kind of explain a little more about the EPR, as you've been the representative in the Capital Region Waste Minimization Committee as well, and part of AUMA committee as well, to see where we're at in that file?
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'm no longer on the ERWAC committee, and I'm no longer on the AMA Sustainability Environment Committee. So I actually do not have an update with regards to EPR at this point, but I do know that we could touch base with MLA Turton as well as the AMA and just get an update on that. I have the feeling, though, that there's been a delay as a result of the pandemic that we've experienced. So, but we do need to follow up on that for sure. And then also with regards to Mr. Dibble's comments with regards to the SEEP program and asking for some additional information. First of all, Edmonton is doing a pilot with the SEEP program, but also St. Albert, Devon, and Rocky Mountain House are in the process of looking at implementing that program as well. So we do have other municipalities in our region that we can reach out to and get additional information, in terms of their progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I can't help you on the EPR. I just do not know specifically at this point where they're at, but I definitely, we do know that it was brought to the legislature and that it was passed. And so I'm not sure of the process in terms of where they're at this point.
That's right, because I believe Emily Turton brought that up with the input from the Capital Region Waste Minimization Committee.
Absolutely, he did. Yeah, I was part of that. Yes. Yes.
So thank you. Okay, go ahead. Do you have questions and comments then?
Yes, I have a question, and then I would probably have a follow-up comment. So my question is to our sustainability scholar, Nicholas. You indicated that you did some research in other communities. And my question is, what were your findings with regards to how to get citizens involved in leading the planning and implementation of an action plan as it would relate to them specifically? And we've heard a number of comments from my fellow colleagues with regards to, getting our citizens to buy in, to be involved, to be committed in the process, whether that's, having rocks on our or grass on our lawns, or using rain gardens, or a number of different initiatives. So just wondering if he had found from other municipalities how they've had the community involved.
Thank you. Good question.
Thank you. Through His Worship Councillor Maddie's, thank you for your question. It's a really great question. When I was researching municipalities, especially in the Edmonton metropolitan region, there's really a wide range of techniques that different municipalities incorporate. Like the city of Edmonton has the Root for Trees program, where they really try to get children involved, younger people, just trying to recruit them. Like also where I found a lot of great techniques that are being used is actually on Vancouver Island, so not even in Alberta, but in Victoria, for example, they have the rainwater incentive program, which is where the inspiration kind of came for the rainwater rebate initiative. So essentially what they do is they provide a rebate. So like monetary incentives to get people kind of doing this so it's worthwhile for them. Of course, it's not really clear if the monetary benefit outweighs the cost of installing a rain garden, but at least it's something to get it considered by people and also provide a little bit of a reward to them for participating. So that's kind of what I found in some municipalities in BC. They're trying to give incentives to people, whereas in Alberta, we try to kind of encourage people through public education, outreach. In out east, they use watershed organizations, partner with them to get into schools and also educate seniors, basically anyone in the community. So a lot of different strategies that could definitely be incorporated here.
Thank you. Councillor Matties?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to follow up on that with regards to, for example, having potentially a community environmental leadership committee that could look at ways that we could, just get the citizens involved in the whole process of our environment. I believe that our citizens have almost become a bit like consumers, where we pay our taxes and then we expect services. But really, we have rights as community members and we have responsibilities that go with that. And part of that is making sure that we're doing everything we can to have a sustainable future. And I know many people that would love to get involved, but there's just not an avenue to get involved. And so that's what I'm wondering, is if there would be a way that we could incorporate a committee of citizens that could just really work at some of these projects. It would certainly take a lot off of the administration's shoulders, and many hands make light work.
Okay, that's a good comment. I'm sure the staff will take that into consideration when we move on to the next phases.
Thank you. And I just want to say this was an excellent report, and I also very much appreciate my colleagues before me and the comments they made. Thank you.
Thank you much, Councillor Matties. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Okay, seeing none, I have a question in terms of urban agriculture on this report. We've heard Councillor Bennett mention about fruit-bearing trees, etc., and stuff like that, which I agree with. I think there's quite a few places in our community that the town has already planted like fruit-bearing trees. But I was wondering if we can have a map on our website. On the Town's Planning website, we do have maps for amenities, businesses, operations, planning, infrastructure, construction. But we don't have a map where it says, here are some areas where you can pick fruit. So in terms of edible fruits, I think along the a sidewalk by the golf course, not by the golf course, by the swimming pool, there's edible fruit there. On the pathway or on the street that leads to what is that'd be 50th Avenue, I believe, that goes to the public works shop. There's also edible trees that have been planted there, and definitely through our trails system, there's a lot of edible raspberries, etc. there. So is that something that we consider in terms of our development as we continue to move our environmental strategy and goals? We want to be more sustainable in terms of food diversity and biodiversity in our communities.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would say yes. It actually fits really well into, again, that broad establishing an online presence, I guess, or information specifically catered to our residents and potentially brochures and that sort of things. I would definitely see that being maybe one of the initial components of that initiative. I know that we have talked about it in the past, and that previously our arborist or horticulturist have kind of provided informal updates on where we have those. So yeah, it would be a little bit of work to ensure that we have it up to date, but I think it would be very beneficial to our residents to have that sort of information available. And I think the online webpage would be a good medium by which to convey that information. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And then, so another question similar to that, we have beautiful flower beds, shrub beds, and kind of gardens that our staff maintain. And a lot of that has, flowering plants or perennials or annuals or whatever you call those plants, but which is really good and it beautifies the community. Was a thought kind of written into there, like maybe we can start planting some vegetables in there? So for example, instead of planting, marigolds or whatever, we plant a couple of tomato bushes there. So again, as it, we're going to be there weeding anyway, so it takes care of that. And then, in the fall, you can take tomatoes out of that, or we can have some carrots planted in those areas instead of having flowers.
Your Worship, I believe that is potentially possible. I would likely wait until making, I guess, an action towards that, in the sense that with the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board's RAMP, the Regional Agricultural Master Plan that they're working on right now, that's supposed to be finished in the next couple months. We do have a administrative project to kind of do an internal for Stony Plain agricultural plan or strategy. And I know some of the initiatives that we went through were kind of put as beyond because they're going to be done through a different mechanism, specifically that kind of Stony Plain agricultural strategy. And I think that's something that could be looked at through that program or that work in the near future.
Okay, thank you. And then other members of council have any questions, comments regarding the report? Okay, see nobody has chimed in. I have another question. Then looking at the on page 36 of the master plan, I see that aerial of Stony Plain, but that's in the mid 80s. So I'm just wondering why administration chose to use that aerial instead of a more recent aerial of Stony Plain.
Your Worship, I'm not 100% sure why this specific one was taken. If I had to guess, I believe this is one of the black and white air photos that we have in our records, and that it was probably taken for the effect of being black and white at the time. Often color ones can be made into black and white, but I believe that probably would have been the reason why it was chosen. I don't know if Nick potentially knows why this one was specifically chosen. If he does, he's welcome to continue after I'm done here.
Thank you.
Your Worship, that is absolutely a great question. I do not have a good reason for why the 1980 from the aerial from the 1980s was used. It was just available on the drive, and then I incorporated that into the document. But yeah, definitely in the final ESS, I do believe it is more updated, but I could be wrong.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious because sometimes pictures are there for a reason, and I just wonder if there was a reason for this picture versus another aerial.
Just for clarification, I believe this is probably about a 2000 photo, because I know West Terra started about 2000 there, so a little more recent, but yeah, still a little outdated compared to some of the more recent colored air photos we have.
Yes, I can see Fairway is just starting off, and same with Graybar. And there's some connections that have not yet been completed, which is kind of interesting to see that actually. And 44th was not connected to Veterans Boulevard as well. Okay, thank you. Members of council, any other questions? Okay, see none. Again, Nick and Emma, thank you very much for your great presentation. It is excellent work on this. I have been reading this with a lot of interest. I believe this is something that we need to focus on. As council members understand, we have 5 pillars in our strategic planning, where we look at different aspects of our community. As mentioned through this whole presentation, we've been very good in terms of the garbage and recycling side, and now it's time for us to kind of focus on different aspects of the environmental pillar. And I'm glad to see this coming forward, and hopefully councils that come after us take this to heart and kind of make that and mold it into part of our municipal development plans and part of our area restructure plans and development plans, so that we can maintain a very healthy balance between our growth, our economics, our industry, and the environment. Thank you much, ladies and gentlemen. We move on to 5.1. I'll need a motion to accept. Councillor Bennett, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping you'd choose me. I move that Town Council accept the Environmental Master Plan and the Environmental Stewardship Strategy for information.
Okay. Thank you much. Members of Council, any questions regarding that motion to accept for information? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Councillor Meyer, Deputy Mayor, if you can verbally register your vote, please.
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Mayor, that's 7 hands in favor then.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Move on to next part of our agenda is council information and council discussion. So if any members of council would like to highlight anything that's happened in our community recently, or to update members of council or our staff. Deputy Mayor, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Your Worship, but nothing this evening from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plechko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to recognize the Pioneer Museum. They were recognized for museum leadership status. They're only the 2nd one in the province to do it. And I got to give kudos to every one of them guys over there that are involved in that Pioneer Museum. They work hard to keep that place for the benefit of our community and the surrounding area. There's lots of history that's in there, and they continue to put a lot of time and effort into it. So just kudos to them guys over there.
Okay, thank you much, Councillor Plechko. Councillor Matties.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing for this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Nothing for me this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Loy.
And I have nothing for this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick things. Congratulations, I think, are in order for our staff and the wonderful fireworks display that happened on Friday night. I happened to be at Heritage Park at the time, and it was a real community gathering. Everyone was very careful, and social distancing was in place, but just to be there with other people when those fireworks went off, it was an incredible feeling. So I do congratulate our staff for that initiative. And Mr. Mayor, also I I was very pleased to see that we have some areas, some places where people can go when when the heat was in the very high 30s. I hope that those places are advertised so that people do know that those are places where they can go to cool off. Yeah, it was, I thought that the weather was, really quite dangerous. And so it's nice to know that we do have facilities that will welcome people just for a reprieve from the heat. That's all for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing that forward. Okay, and for me, it's just for our residents and members of council that this is the week that Golf Course Road gets started in terms of construction. So again, please be cognizant if you're going north-south on that road. It is from Right Bank Avenue to 628, so there will be construction delays on that. With that, that brings us to adjournment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Again, administration, thank you for the great report, and definitely kudos goes to Nick and Emma for the work. This is why we have interns. They actually bring a lot of insight to our community and some fresh eyes on some of the topics that council is reviewing and dealing with. So thank you very much, everybody. You guys have a good evening.
Good night, all.
Good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, all.